All right. We are back on the mics. Back from a eventful weekend.
Especially for you, man.
Eventful weekend.
Red Snapper and Bahamas. We'll probably break this up into two parts just to milk it for all we can, but also just to organize our thoughts a little bit better.
We'll see how fast we get through the Red Snapper.
We'll see. I mean, we covered the last one. We didn't really say anything, I felt like, and it still took 20 minutes to say I'm going to go on a Red Snapper trip. Took it 20 minutes. So
well, I was in a rush. I was trying to get to Red Snapper.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, it sounded good. We kind of missed the intro a little bit. Good evening, Eric.
That's right. That was just the prequel.
The prequel to the intro.
The pre-intro. Welcome, everybody, to the Xhale podcast. I'm your host, Eric Strauss, and I'm here with our other host, Rodman Lees. How's it going, Rodman?
It's going well, Eric. Good evening.
Good evening, indeed. And it is evening. It's 8 o'clock.
Boom. We did it. So my dad always gives me a hard time. He's like one of our 3 watchers. He's like, you never plug the shop. We are recording in our shop in Center Street.
At Xhale Spearfishing. If you can see the sign.
Cool neon sign. Spear guns. Pole spears behind us.
There we go, man.
Anything you need to dive, we're right on Center Street in Jupiter. So.
Yeah, 226 Center Street or xhalespearfishing.com. That's where we're at. Check us out on Instagram at xhale_spearfishing. It's where we're always uploading our latest viral reels.
You actually got a pretty good touch on the reels. It's stuff that I think is hilarious, but I would never actually think of. You're on that meme trend.
Instagram is so frustrating to me. Sorry, that probably made a lot of noise.
It's
just to satisfy my slight OCD, just push that plug in all the way. Thank you, sir.
It's a cruel mistress of you always want to be putting stuff out there, but people are going to interact with it for 10 seconds, and you got to keep feeding the beast.
Oh yeah, it's on and gone, and it's what I find the most frustrating about it. So Instagram nowadays, as anybody who has to deal with running Instagram stuff, Instagram pushes Reels pretty heavily.
Yeah.
When they first came out with Reels, it was definitely a thing. Now it seems to have evened out a little bit, but they still push Reels pretty heavy. So I try to upload as many Reels as possible. And I'll put one up that's I'm like, oh, this is sick. I'm shooting a big fish. People are going to be fired up on this. And it'll do all right. It'll get some action or get reposted by one of the big spearfishing pages like Spear Channel or whatever. And then I'll post something that's just it seems so dumb. And that's the one that takes off.
I think the music too, if you're on trending music, which if you guys aren't on that King George program, you need to get on that King George right now.
Don't make it too public.
Nah, I want everyone banging King George all the time.
Shout out King George.
Yeah.
Shout out Dylan for finding the song of the summer.
Dude. So good. So good.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, just look up King George. Man.
Yeah. Gotta keep moving on.
Keep moving on. Speaking of moving on.
He's got a couple bangers.
Straight into the Red Snappy Pappy.
Dude, you are the Red Snappy Pappy. You friggin' put a hurting on him, man. One day. Drove up there. How long of a drive was it?
From Jupiter to Canaveral, which is where we're diving out of. I think we determined this was my 4th.
Yeah, 4th or 5th year.
Let's see, 1, 2. Yeah, this is the 4th year that I've been up there. First year, incredible conditions. Second year, terrible conditions. Third year, better conditions, but still terrible. Fourth year, perfect conditions, perfect hunting conditions. It's about a 2-hour drive, little less than 2 hours.
Gotcha. And how long were you in the water for before you shot your fish?
I did 2 dives. I shot it on the second dive.
Nice. Efficient.
Not long.
Yeah, it just blows my mind how many of them are swimming around out there.
Minute and a half dives, and maybe probably realistically 5 minutes of surface interval. I'm not pumping that. We're running a rotation of dives, so it's
for sure.
Although to be fair, I kind of cheated the rotation a little bit on that second dive. I think I dove.
Got to do what you got to do.
I
to
think I
shoot your
dove
fish.
back to back, but yeah, it's so epic trip. I'm bummed that I only got to do one day. You know, as we talked about in the prequel episode, since we had a prequel intro, that we'll refer to that one as the prequel episode as well. We talked about how red snapper is a 2-day season here on the Atlantic. It can change, but it's been 2 days for a while now.
Yeah.
2 days, one fish per person per day. Very, very limited harvest, obviously. And it seems like a lot of work to go all the way up to Canaveral just for a group of us to each shoot one fish for 2 days in a row. And it is a lot of work. Shout out to Brandon, Not Just Fishing on Instagram, because this is the second year I've gone with him and that particular group of guys. And he put together the trip for the most part. So major shout out to Brandon. Ran his boat up there and everything, trailered the boat up. So, you know, it's always nice when somebody else puts together the entire trip for you.
For sure.
But just it's a weird thing to describe. So 4 years ago, I had my first experience shooting the red snapper and doing this trip. And I always talk about how addictive it is. It's so much work and so much effort for 2 days and 2 fish. But like, there is an aspect to this type of diving that you just don't get with any other species.
Yeah, where you're just surrounded by them. You're shooting a giant fish.
Yeah. A target-rich environment is such an understatement that it's not even worth using that terminology. I mean, it is just, it is selective hunting at its best, you know, because you are passing fish after fish after fish after fish, and you're just you could go all day long and just look at giant red snapper and not shoot one. Like, it is that selective. And I got addicted on that first trip. It was introduced to me. I've had the pleasure of the next 3 trips introducing other people to it for their first time. And everybody has the same reaction and the same level of addiction to it straight away. Even on the times we've had like the worst conditions ever. The second year that I went, I brought Nick. That was his first time going for it. And it was like less than 10 feet of visibility from top to bottom. All the way from the surface to the bottom, just brown. And it was like, we ended up catching most of our limit on rod and reel. Like, most of the people on the boat caught them rod and reel. And I think me, Nick, and Allie were all like, we're out here. Like,
we're committed.
We've got the day. Actually, that time I think I only did one day as well. Let's just get in the water and make it happen. It's 70 feet deep with 10 feet of viz, less than 10 feet of viz. You know, I mean, it's gnarly conditions, and it's not sharky as like we consider sharky here, but there are sharks.
Yeah.
And in 10 feet of visibility, sharks aren't fun.
No.
So whatever. In that kind of condition, you just dive down, bob the first one. But seeing people's first reaction to getting walled by red snapper like that is always cool, because it brings me back to my first interaction with it. And then this year we had a couple guys on the trip that had never done it before. Bryce, who was here, when we did the last episode, and Bryce shot a freaking stud, dude. I was stoked for Bryce, because most of the time the first fish you shoot, everybody shoots a small fish thinking it's a big fish.
Yeah.
Bryce shot a big fish, and it was a big fish.
Yeah.
So that was
it's nice to see him not with a tank on his back too.
I know,
free
that
diving,
freaking bubble blower, dude.
Trying to keep him on the good.
Dude, freaking Bryce, bro. Completely converted to the dark side, blowing bubbles, hardcore, doing like real scuba diving, you know, 120 plus foot scuba diving and shooting good fish. Hasn't free dove in forever, goes right up to Canaveral with us. We're in 60, 70 feet of water. Bro's laying on the bottom. Jerk.
What a man. What a man.
One of those people that's just like good at everything.
Gotcha. So that's awesome that you were able to get a good one. They get topped scales right about 20, 18 and change.
Pounds.
Yeah.
18 pounds. Not a 20. Not the 20 I was after.
Yeah.
But
how are you judging it down there? So you're just looking for the biggest in the school?
Hard.
Like it's definitely hard.
I'm a little more used to looking at them than most of the guys that I was with.
Yeah.
So, but I'm still like, I've only seen these fish for 2 days out of the year for the past 4 years. So like I haven't looked at a ton of them. I mean, I have, but I haven't. And it is difficult to judge the size, but you can tell, like, really you're just looking for the biggest one. Like you said.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the biggest one. But when I finally, like, when I make a dive and I see the biggest fish on that dive, I'm going to look at that fish for a while.
Make sure someone else doesn't swim around. You're like, oh, no, that's actually the big one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And what I will say, what I found is most of the spots that we hit, there'll be like a handful of bigger fish, like between 2 or 3 of like the bigger fish on that spot in particular. Once we shoot those fish, the rest, like, we won't see bigger fish anymore on that spot.
Gotcha.
Like that category of fish, you know. So like this, we only dove one spot when we were there, and
how many guys
we
did you
shot
have?
2 big fish off of it.
Yeah.
You know, and
but everyone shot.
Everyone shot fish, and everybody shot big fish. Anything over 10 is big in my book for red snapper. I shot at 18. Bryce's basically was 18. The fish were the exact same size. Like, we all thought Bryce's fish was bigger, but it weighed in a little bit less. But it physically looked bigger. And everybody else shot fish over 10 pounds. I mean,
nice.
It was like,
it's awesome, man.
Yeah, we all shot.
The pictures just look stupid.
Yeah. And we were in and out of the water. You know, we were done by like, let's say 10 a.m. to be conservative. You know, like we were done. And I definitely got lucky. The boys let me kind of have first pick. I think we talked about it on the last one that I was trying to get one with the polespear.
Yeah.
So the boys gave me first pick.
Nice.
First couple dives.
Nice. How'd it go? And you got it on the polespear.
We got it. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, if you go on our Instagram, there's a short reel of me plugging that red snapper on the polespear, on the ballast polespear.
There you go.
Of all things.
There you go. Not of all things, of course, on the ballast.
Of course,
polespear.
on the ballast polespear.
Thing's a freaking money pull.
Yeah. Well, we're a little biased. We do make them.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And on that video, you got to see really what the viz looked like. Like it's not crystal by any means.
I will say in the video, it's a little deceiving. It's definitely dirty.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It's very dirty. But the best possible conditions that we can get up there are pretty much what we had. When it's clear the first time, which is that fish in that picture up there, we had pretty much top to bottom viz on a lot of the spots that we dove. And it was really nice because you can see the bottom. Yeah. But the fish don't seem to like that clear water very much. They like a little bit dirtier viz. And maybe that's, like we were talking, that why we really don't see many red snapper in this area. And it's just like this gap where we just don't see them. Maybe it's because it's clearer water. Whatever. That's a little theory to throw out there.
I don't know.
Because
Key West gets them. Key West.
Yeah, but Key West. Everybody thinks Key West.
It gets milked out. It does get milked out sometimes.
Dude, the lower Keys, like southwest of Marathon, like from Marathon down, it's pretty much like the visibility is not great most of the year. It gets good, and most of the time it's like it is top to bottom in like 40 feet.
Yeah,
but a lot of it gets not great down there. It's not as good as people think it is.
I don't know. I think it's pretty great.
The visibility is not as good as people think it is down there.
I think Marathon and Key West are different viz for sure.
Absolutely, not include Marathon gets very clear. most of our keys diving nowadays is Big Pine. Big Pine, we don't see crystal clear viz very often from Big Pine to Key West. It's like you get that milk patch out there, and it does get crystal clear. But it's
and I feel like if I'm in the Keys, maybe I don't notice it because I'm either diving like 15 feet or like offshore.
Yeah,
like I'm not really diving that like 50 foot. I'm like diving the bar.
Last time we dove Key West, it was top to bottom in like 140.
Yeah, but that's because we were like out diving the bar.
Some of the most insane viz I've ever dove in. I mean, that was absurd.
Yeah,
but regardless.
All right.
Yeah. So nasty thermocline.
Yeah, nasty thermocline. What kind of bottom were you diving?
Natural structure, but it's like, dude, the ledges are almost non-existent. Like I don't.
So it's almost just like hard bottom more than it's a bottom ledge.
With like, there's a ledge, and it's enough for a fish to get like to hide under.
So it's like 2 feet of relief, a foot of relief.
Those reds aren't hiding under them. Like
that's fair.
The mangroves hide in it.
Yeah.
The reds don't hide in it.
Gotcha.
That's just not big enough.
So you're going out and looking for like ledges. You're looking for structure.
Yeah, and there's artificial stuff up there. There's a lot of natural structure up there. I think the key with any area, but definitely out of Canaveral, is getting a little bit off of the beaten path. I think the artificial stuff gets hit really hard during those 2 days because everybody just gravitates straight to it.
Yeah.
Because the artificial stuff holds big snapper and a lot of them.
Yeah. And they've probably been catching and letting them go there all year
round,
waiting for the season to open.
Yeah, all year round they're catching fish off. And because in the off season you're trying to get through them.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're trying to grouper fish,
you're
catching
mangroves.
red snapper all day, and just weeding through until you finally get something else. But the artificial spots, the wrecks and stuff, we've pulled up to them before and just been like, nah, because there would be, 10, 15 boats on it. And
where you guys were? So let's take an extreme example. If you out like scalloping out of like Homosassa, the first time I ever did it, I asked like, hey, where do you go? And they laughed at me because you run out the channel and it's just a pack of boats. Like you literally can't miss it.
Yeah.
And so if that's like the extreme of like, dude, everyone's just on the spot. Where you was it like, were there boats near you? Were you guys spread out?
Yeah, it is spread out because you're running a pretty good ways to get to the depth you need to be in, as well as our spots kind of vary. If sometimes the viz is better on like to the north or the south, so you kind of play those odds a little bit differently. But there's definitely boats around for sure.
All right.
We saw boats all day.
Gotcha.
Everybody is on the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like rain, shine, wind, snow, don't matter.
So let's say
some of the freaking creature of boats that pull up to the ramp during this season. Do some of these boats have been sitting in somebody's yard in like Orlando for the entire year and only come out for this? Like there's some creatures at the boat ramp.
I'm Toby Silverman, and I went bottom fishing the other day when the mutton were running pretty good. The mutton actually this past weekend, people were crushing the mutton.
Yeah.
But we went out to Stewart and went to the bait pile or like bait hole, and do these creatures, this older couple on a John boat, like they're like bailing the John boat and cussing at us at the same time, and I'm like, I'm not even sure what we did, but we like roll up to catch bait and they're like, get the F out of here, and I'm like, Toby, like, do these people know you? Like, what did you do to them? I don't know. It's hilarious. Just creatures on boats. But, all right. So just looking for like from a hard bottom. Did you guys chum them up at all?
We did. So last year we had a pretty awful experience overall. I mean, we had a freaking blast. Don't get me wrong. But as far, you want the shaft, dude? Go ballast knife.
I got the ballast knife.
Right on the chin. So last year we had poor visibility and a lot of current, and we worked really hard to find decent fish. And by the time I finally shot a fish that was in that 18, 20 pound range, it got sharked really bad. Big bull shark absolutely annihilated it. And like, you know, the surface viz is like 15 feet. I mean, it was just gnarly. And the bottom viz was like 5.
That's not what you want.
No, it was really bad. And the current was flying.
Yeah.
And a lot of these spots, like, you have to anchor on them because you're just not. It's hard to stay on the spots because you can't see them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there is current. Normally, there's a little bit of current, not much, like enough where you can anchor and like stay around the boat. But yeah, so this year, after talking to a few people from the area, they're all basically advising us like, dude, chum them up so that you don't have to fight them from the bottom. You're already halfway up.
Yeah.
The sharks have half the distance to try and get it.
Yeah.
So that was our plan. We brought a lot of chum. Brandon brought a lot of chum, and we burned it all the first day.
So you guys had them going then.
We had them on the surface.
Dang.
Yes.
Dang.
Super, super sick to see. So we pulled up really early. We got to the boat ramp at like 5. Giant line at the boat ramp. Probably like a 30-minute line at the boat ramp. And every parking spot was full yet. We had to park.
How was that boat ramp? Smooth, or is there some qualified captains rolling around? I love a good boat ramp both ways.
Yeah.
When people are just like hustling through it, I'm super impressed.
Yeah.
But when people are like losing their minds, screaming at their wives and children, I think it's hilarious.
Every time I've been to it, it's been pretty smooth.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's just so many people that it like gets clogged up.
Yeah.
And it's a big ramp.
Man, they got the boat ramp that I use in Stewart, Sansprit. They've shut down like 4. There used to be like 4 or 5, maybe more ramps, and then 2 little ramps on the side.
Yeah.
And the way it kind of worked was like your families and stuff used like the big main ramps, and like kind of the commercial guys used like the back 2. Well, they only have the back 2 now. They're like redoing it. So the line to use the boats on Sundays is wild.
Yeah. Nothing like this, I promise.
Oh, I believe you. I believe you. But it went from like every time you just zip up and throw it in, we'd always use like the back ones. And
it's such an ordeal. They have like cops, like traffic cops at the boat ramp at like 4 in the morning.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the whole lot, I mean, there's probably, I think there's 4 ramps, and each ramp is wide enough to probably launch. You could launch 4 like medium boats on one ramp. Like they're huge ramps.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of those, maybe 5.
Yeah. That'd be kind of wild to be like the 2 middle boats, like without the finger, like.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. So, I mean, it's pretty incredible how many people are actually there. And when you get your boat on the water, I mean, you're like in front of the ramp, it is a cluster, dude.
I believe it.
Cluster.
I believe it.
Yeah, you're bobbing and weaving hardcore. But it all adds to the experience.
For sure.
You know?
A little bit of pressure.
It's a little bit of pressure.
Dude.
It gets you like fired up that like everybody's out there to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
I don't
like,
know why I feel so much pressure at the boat ramp. Like I've never really messed it up. But like you just know that everyone's watching. Like this is like the trickiest part, and everybody's watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's a lot of people, to say the least.
So you guys are using chum? Were you like doing
Yeah.
throw flashers or anything like that?
No throw flashers.
Any regular flashers?
We got out. We got to the spot like as the sun was. It was starting to get light, but the sun had like not quite gotten over the horizon yet.
Okay.
And we started chumming immediately. We anchored.
Yeah.
We were marking fish as soon as we anchored. Started chumming. Got to the point where we could I think we can like see them which we were stoked because all of a sudden we're like, oh, the visibility on the surface is good.
Yeah.
And we did have, it was probably 40 feet of viz on the surface, which is, that's what you want there.
Sick, yeah.
Because you can like see the sharks coming.
Awesome.
if they do come around. Got to the point where we had fish all the way up to the surface of the boat. Right before it was light enough to dive, they were like, we're like gearing up and fish are like eating baits off of the surface, which is pretty cool. And we immediately started, like when it was still dark, we're catching them on rod and reel straight away.
Yeah.
Couple of guys were bottom fishing like whole sardines and hooked up on some stud fish. Actually, a pretty funny story about catching one of them. One of the guys, Matt, on the trip, he hand ties like little jigs, little feather like bucktail jigs. That's like his thing. He's like super fired up on them. They're actually really nice jigs. And he was like jigging his little hand tied jigs, hooked up on his first red that he's ever caught. I think first red he's ever caught on his jig, and he's big into like getting as many species as he can on his jigs.
Yeah.
And so he gets it in the boat. It's like, it's not a big red, but it's
hold it up to the camera.
It's a verifiable like new species on the jig.
Yeah.
So he gets it in the boat. It's on the floor. Right before he boats this thing, Billy boats like a 15-pounder on rod and reel in the boat. We were actually gonna keep that fish.
Yeah.
But we were all kind of like debating, like, should we keep this or should we just save it all for diving? Like, what do we want? Who wants to give up their slot for this fish? Because like it was a stud. So Matt, who caught this little red, turns around to like get his phone to take a picture of his fish with the jig.
And Billy's got this freaking monster.
No. So both fish are on the ground. His smaller fish like slid under a pile of fins. And he's like, just grabs the 15-pounder. He's like, dude, this is a bigger fish than I thought it was. And we're all like, should we tell him? Yeah. And he measures it and like takes a picture of it and just chucks it back in the water. And we're all like, oh.
Well, that ended the argument.
Okay.
Yeah, decisions have been made.
And we all have like faces on, and he turns around, he's like, yeah, guys. And I'm like, dude, you gonna release your fish? And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, bro, like that's your fish right there. And he's like, oh shit. And goes and puts it back in the water.
Nice.
It was funny. We're all like, did that just happen?
Yeah. But you wind up leveling up anyway. 18's like, bigger than 15.
Nobody was worried. It wasn't a big deal at all. We were gonna most likely release that fish anyway. So it was just funny because we're all like,
oh no,
that's not the right one, dude.
For sure. So you're saying that Bryce going from scuba to free diving, held his own, diving on the laying on the bottom. That's the technique, huh? You're just going down there and waiting on the bottom for him.
Yeah. So like I said, we talked to some people that basically told us to chum them up.
Yeah.
Get them up, and we did chum them up, and there were some decent fish coming up by the time we got in the water, but not shooters by any means. And like I also said before, I got first crack at it for the most part. Since I was using the pole, I think everybody just kind of instinctively like gave me first crack at it.
Nice.
So I made my first dive, went down to like the thermocline layer, which probably came up to 15 or 20 feet off the bottom, and got to the edge of the thermocline and just kind of like floated in it, went down like maybe 2 or 3 feet into the thermocline, and I could see some bigger fish like cruising around. So I'm like, all right, they're here. Like I'm not gonna rush into trying to shoot one of these things. Like they're cruising. Like they're not spooked by me at all. They're just hanging out. So I came back up. The way we're trying to do this is like there's 6 of us, so pretty much everybody is in the water for the most part. Maybe one guy or two guys are on the boat just taking a break or whatever. But we're anchored with a rope coming out of the stern of the boat, and we all just kind of like hang on to the rope, and whoever's at the stern of the boat on the rope, it's their dive.
Nice.
And whoever is like at the back of the rope, they're going to watch that person as they dive, safety them when they come up, and move, up the line.
Yeah, conveyor them up.
So that's what we were doing, except I took my first dive, which was also the first dive of the whole trip, take a peek around, come back up. I think there was only 3 guys in the water, and they weren't really, like, doing anything. Yeah. So I just grabbed the front of the rope, and everyone, they were like, we kind of, like, laid the ground rules of how the rotation was going to work, and I was already holding on the front of the rope. I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to go again. And everyone was like, yeah, whatever. So I dive again and get down to the thermocline. And I could tell, like, even though we were trying to chum fish up, like, the fish were on the bottom still.
Yeah.
So I just punched the thermocline, saw the fish that I wanted, like, coming out of the corner of my eye. He was going to cross underneath me. So I just kind of cruised through the thermocline down to the bottom, maybe 5 feet off the bottom, leveled out. And he crossed right underneath me, and I just watched him go right around and slow down and, like, turn back and look at me. I was like, he's getting it.
Yeah.
I was already loaded on the pole because I could see him before I saw him from the surface. He, like, came up out of the thermocline and went back down. I was like,
that's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And, I looked at him when he turned and looked at me. I started, like, creeping towards him, and he was like, I don't know. I don't like that movement. Started swimming away, and I ended up chasing him and he wasn't spooked enough that I could close the distance, and took like a quartered off shot. He was quartering away from me. Not an ideal shot, through the meat, but on the pole spear, I was like, I don't care.
Stoked, yeah.
Plugged that thing, dude. It freaking did not hurt him at all.
Yeah. Just going for it.
And I'm afraid to admit to this.
I know what's coming.
Because you know what's coming. I'm afraid to admit to this, but I was using a belt reel, which I'm the biggest proponent of not using belt reels. But I think I used it for 2 reasons. I didn't want to run the float line because I've dove with a guy that was running a float line on a pole spear, and it was a shit show between, like, the anchor line and a flasher line and the rope behind the boat. We also, on that trip, we had like a marker buoy with a rope going down, and it was getting tangled in everything. And I was just like, I don't want to do that, like, to those guys or deal with it the whole time in the water. So, and then the other part of me that I also decided to use, it was like, I always give the belt reel so much grief, but I never really use them that much. So let me just use this thing. Everybody else will be stoked because I don't have a float line in the water, and just see how I like it.
I'm slowly dragging you to the dark side. I'm sorry, Errol.
I know. That fish dumped that reel.
Yeah.
Dumped it. I will say this about the belt reel. It was convenient to use, and it worked flawlessly this time.
Yeah.
They don't always work flawlessly, but this time it worked flawlessly. Fish dumped the reel.
You can definitely feel it pulling on you while you're swimming up.
I had it was loose. Like it
Yeah.
it didn't affect me. Like, to be fair, function was flawless. Everything worked perfectly. That much line off of that belt reel was a disaster. There was so much line in the water, and you can't. So usually I'm used to we're buddy diving and like safety diving hardcore. So I shoot this fish on pole spear. Nobody can hear me shoot it. So it's like nobody knew what happened until I'm like coming up with no pole, and my shit's like, and I'm like, and so Billy flies down, grabs the, takes a wrap on the line. He starts pulling it up. So I get to the surface, and he gets to the surface and starts pulling line up. Usually on a gun, like if somebody else is going to pull my fish up, I'm sitting there reeling and slack as fast as I can. So I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
this
or
is
the other
sick.
way around. Someone gets to the surface and they're fighting their fish. I'm gonna grab their gun
Exactly.
and start reeling it up
Because that's the best way to do
to
it.
manage it.
And
yeah.
on a gun, it's pretty easy to reel
Yeah.
in. The belt reel, dude, psych. You
Yeah.
ain't reeling in shit.
Especially on like a rubber belt because it's stretchy, so you're just
Yeah, you're
wiggling.
like-
You're just wiggling the belt back and forth. Yeah.
It's like somebody using a conventional reel for the first time, like a stand-up
Yeah.
rod with a conventional reel, like a TLD 25.
Just spinning
And
the
it's like-
reel.
They just can't control it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I started trying to do it, and I was like, that's not going to happen. So I just started throwing line behind me.
Yeah.
And we finally get the fish up, and I look behind me, and I'm like, God, miss me with that.
Yeah. Just a giant 10 by 10 tumbleweed, a real line.
It was disgusting. And Billy has the fish. I go over and grab the fish from him. I'm like, sick. I'm going to swim back to the boat. And I'm like gassed up. I've got this fish. This fish
Yeah.
is like kind of kicking us a little bit. So I'm fired up on it. And I'm like, oh, sick. I'll turn back around. Don't even think about the freaking tumbleweed behind me and swim straight through it. And all of a sudden, I'm just like freaking Michelin Man in white Dyneema.
Yeah.
And yeah, Billy just like dumps my weight belt. He just dumps my weight belt and like fishes me through the line.
Yeah.
Shout out Billy. Billy's the best backup diver ever, dude. He's like on point every single time. But whatever. Got the fish in the boat, and I ended up like taking the reel off the belt to reel it in. Like, I'm not gonna lie, which is what we always say, right? It's like the belt reel is great until you have to use it.
Yeah.
And the belt reel was great, but when I had to use it, it sucked.
Yep.
It did suck. I stand by that statement, but it was super convenient.
For sure. The only other thing I was gonna ask you, so laying on the bottom like that, what's your like average dive time? You know, like what, or maybe not your average, but like if you wanted to go out there and do it effectively, what bottom times are you trying to shoot for? Or maybe not bottom times, but
Yeah.
dive times.
No, it really, if you're hunting them on the bottom, which every time I've been there, regardless of whether we're chumming or not, the big fish are on the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could spend more time with more chum and get those big fish up, but like you're gonna spend a lot of time chumming, a lot of money in chum,
Yeah.
unless you're netting it yourself. But I'm gonna be realistic because it's not. The whole thing is not for the faint of heart. It's a pretty rowdy experience all around, and like you got to have your shit together. It's not easy diving, and it's hard. It's tough conditions. You know, it's low vis, big fish. There are sharks around. Bottom time is pretty essential. So like if your total dive to get those bigger fish, you need to be pushing minute 30 plus dives.
That's a serious dive.
Yeah.
That's a serious
Like
dive.
it's just the only way you're going to get close to those bigger fish because they are on the bottom. You got to lay on the bottom and they're going to come to you. They're going to come to you every time. And
Yeah.
It's tough. Like all the other guys shot fish still. Not everybody that was diving there that day, like not everybody had minute 30 dive times. Everybody shot fish.
Yeah.
But to level up into that 20-pound category, you're laying on the bottom. Like you're putting some serious dive times down. Bryce was doing it. You know, Bryce showed me the video of him shooting his fish, and he's on bottom for a while and doing a great job at it. And after I shot we can only shoot one, so I shot my fish, and I'm just kind of like, you know,
That's it for the day. Yeah.
So I'm diving down and like just just cruising. I'm not loading the polespear or nothing.
Yeah.
I'm bringing it with me just in case a big mango or whatever comes around, but I'm not loading it. So I'm calm. I'm like doing bomber dives I'm doing like minute 45 dives, just laying there. And there's big fish everywhere, dude. There's 18-pound fish, 20-pound fish all around me the entire rest of the day. And nobody else is shooting anything. I'm like, guys, like there's fish here. There's still fish here. And they're big. And people were saying that they were seeing one, but they can't get close to them. These things are like buzzing me like this. I'm like, you gotta lay on the bottom.
Yeah.
And not everybody that we were diving with, they're all awesome divers. I'm not trying to take away anything from any of those guys. They all crushed it, but you do gotta put some time in underwater for sure.
That's fair. All right. Last thing before we wrap it up, we're laying on the bottom. You nervous about sharks at all?
Yeah. So no.
I'm just trying to get you to tell the story.
Yeah, I know. I'm leading into it. The answer for your question of whether I'm nervous about sharks in Canaveral is no. Are there sharks there? Yes. But we're used to diving here.
Yeah.
We're used to diving Stewart. We're used to diving Jupiter. We're used to diving the Bahamas.
Yeah.
We dive the sharkiest water arguably on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, it is disgustingly sharky here.
Yeah.
Big bull sharks, big tigers, big hammers all the time. Like, we're constantly covered up in sharks.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're just so used to always being around them. And there's not nearly the quantity of sharks up there that we have here. So they don't really bother me. I'm not thinking about it nearly as much, but it is in the back of your head, and because I know there are sharks there. My last dive of the day on this trip, and it was the last dive for a reason. One guy dove down before me and saw a sandbar shark. I was like, whatever. We see him. Usually we see at least one up there.
Yeah.
But so I go down. I do like a not all the way to the bottom dive, just to scope around and like see if he's hanging around. Didn't see him. So I'm like, sick. Go up, breathe up, do the rotation. Next dive, go down. I'm relaxed. I'm like laying on the bottom. I'm trying to like just film some big snapper swimming around. So I hadn't turned the camera on yet because they hadn't quite come up to me. Like if they're outside of, you saw the video of this.
Yeah.
Like if it's not right in front of you, you can't even see it on the camera. So I didn't turn the camera on yet. And I'm laying there, fins like pressed onto the sand, and I'm looking around, and I just feel my fins like getting messed with. I'm like, turn around, it's a freaking giant hammerhead, like doing the hammerhead scuttle. On like trying to get underneath my fins, like if you thought my fins were like a ray or something, like in the sand, trying to get underneath it to lift it up and get a hold of it. But dude was gassed up in the, like, I look behind me, it's a cloud of sand and just a giant hammer just right on my fins. I'm like, like whip the spear around. I'm like, get out of here. So yeah, I got in the boat. We were done.
Terrifying. A whole bunch of chum right on the bottom.
Yeah, and it's on the bottom. It's super, super poor. If you want to see how bad the visibility is, go to our Instagram. It should be it's the second reel on our Instagram right now.
Xhale spearfishing.
Xhale_spearfishing.
Yeah.
But it'll come up either way. Yeah, you want to see how bad the viz was? That's a video of me shooting a almost a 20-pound snapper. You know, things this freaking long, this freaking tall, and at polespear range, so less. It's probably 5 feet in front of me, and you can barely see it in that video. You know, so you want to see how bad that viz is. Let's go take a peek at that.
Well, fuck. I'm glad. I'm glad it didn't bite you, man.
I'm glad it didn't bite me either.
Because we went to the Bahamas the next day. The next day, which will be a different video.
We're not rolling. We're gonna separate it.
Yeah,
we're at 40, almost an hour. That's a good. That's a good separation.
That is plenty. You just spent an hour talking about your 15-minute, your 2-dive red snapper trip.
I mean, it's a good story, man.
That's it. All right, guys.
You're coming next year. We gotta figure out how to get us both up there next year.
For sure.
Because, like I said earlier, I think one of the most fun things is how addicted I am to this red snapper thing. And then seeing how easy it is to get other people addicted to it.
Yeah.
You know,
dude, the whole time you're telling me this story, it's like, God damn it, I need to do this.
It's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
It's a ton of work, but it's a ton of fun.
Sounds good.
Next year.
Boom.
Get you up there, man.
All right.
Go shoot one of those.
I'm gonna be real picky with it. I'm gonna be like, everyone else shot their fish at 10. I'm gonna be out there at like 4:30 in the afternoon and be like, haven't found the right one yet. Nice. All right. Here we go. On to the next one.